We're going to quickly move to our aerospace panel. I'll invite all of the panelists to come up if I can now. So if you are speaking on the aerospace panel, now would be the time to start making your way. And as they do, this is one of our featured projects throughout the summit. There has been extensive work done between Montreal, of course, being the third largest aerospace community in the world, and us here at Ohio, because we invented the airplane. Although there's some folks in Connecticut that try to claim that, and it's an ongoing fight. But come on up, folks, come on up while you can. But our moderator for this session, I just wanted to introduce Lauren McGarity, who is the Director of Globalization Projects for the Ohio Department of Education, formerly known as the Ohio Board of Regents. As many of you can appreciate, Lauren has the task of managing our entire statewide public institutions networks on globalization. So she has to herd a lot of cats at many, many different universities. And there's a special place in heaven reserved for Lauren. But one of the things that we'll see is that we have an initiative called Ohio Great, and Lauren will talk a little bit about what that is. It's an innovative project here and how that fits into the Canada-U.S. framework. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Lauren, and you can introduce the panel.
Thank you. Come. Come join.
And you can't figure out how to get
Come
up
on.
the stairs.
They were just being gracious, letting the woman go first. So just as folks are seating themselves, good afternoon. And we're going to take this opportunity to have this session be about application and the future and projects and concepts that are in the works and in the planning stages and in the pipeline within the construct of the state of Ohio's innovative initiative, as Dan introduced, the Ohio Great Initiative. So I'll be talking about that. But before I do, do you have a microphone? Is there a microphone? There we go. These gentlemen are very capable of introducing themselves.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having invited me. My name is Denis Faubert. I am the CEO, actually, of two research or innovation consortia, one based in Quebec called CRIAC, and the other one based across the country, CARIC. So my office is managing both of them. So I'm going to be explaining our model. I think Wendy had a beautiful introduction to our session. I think all the principles that she explained, I think, are quite well applied in these two consortia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Heil. I am president of the Ohio Aerospace Institute, and I'll be telling you more about that institute in a few minutes.
I'm Mike Benzakein. I'm a vice president of Aerospace and Aviation Research at The Ohio State University. My background is really many, many years of General Electric before I joined academia. And one of the big things for us at GE was the collaboration we did between the United States and France, and I'll talk about that.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Tanner. I'm Vice President of Corporate and Government Affairs with NetJets here in Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you. Thank you all. So just to kind of start in the context of what the state of Ohio is doing with all four of these gentlemen and many of you as well. In 2014, Governor Kasich spearheaded and championed a unique statewide policy initiative and called Ohio's Global Reach to Engage Academic Talent, which is the acronym GREAT. So you may not remember Global Reach to Engage Academic Talent, but hopefully you'll remember Ohio GREAT. That initiative was codified into law by the General Assembly and put under the charge, as Dan indicated, of the Ohio Department of Higher Education, the Chancellor of the Department of Higher Ed. And as several of the speakers today have already talked about, the critical importance of both higher education from a talent development perspective, from a research perspective, as well as business from an end user perspective and an innovation perspective. So Ohio Great seeks to convene and, I think to quote Dan, herd the cats of all sectors relative to this. So the three objectives of the Ohio Great Initiative are to promote Ohio as a post-secondary destination globally. Yes, we don't have an ocean here, but we have a whole lot going on. And we want the rest of the world to know about what's going on here in Ohio and the assets that we have available to us and the collaborative nature of the people of Ohio. Encourage international students to remain engaged with business. That doesn't necessarily mean remain feet on the ground within the boundaries of the state of Ohio, but we certainly want to maximize the opportunity that we have with international students in our state by connecting them with their communities, by connecting them with business, by getting them connected with those who they can then build relationships that will become the legacies when they go back home to their various countries, or if they decide to remain here more long term. The next objective is to enhance global opportunities for Ohio domestic students, Ohio kids. This is one of the very unique elements of this initiative, is that it's about everybody. It's not just about recruiting international students. It's just not about assuring that we have, talent from abroad, but it's about cultivating the talent from within Ohio, and a critical part of that is by exposing Ohio students to operations abroad, to cultures abroad, to all of the dynamic energies abroad. There we go, let's try. Okay, so the three state-level strategies to operationalize these objectives is to create the infrastructure within the state of Ohio, and I don't mean infrastructure in terms of roads, but I certainly mean the infrastructure about some of those relationships that many of you have talked about today between higher ed and business, the needs of each. Increasing internal awareness of Ohio, international awareness of Ohio, and then increasing international engagement with Ohio. So back to that infrastructure piece, because I think that increasing awareness of Ohio internationally and increasing international collaboration with Ohio is self-explanatory. Creating the infrastructure within the state is the intentional recognition that education ecosystem and business ecosystems are not the same. That the missions are different, that the functionality, the norms are different, and that obviously there's a reliance on each other, and there's a recognition of a value added. However, I see that more of a codependency. And like many codependencies, folks approach them with trying to get the other one to kind of just change just a little bit to accommodate their need, and you end up with kind of the same old, same old. So what we're trying to do here in the state of Ohio is create a third option, and that is with strategic tactics and very intentional activities in place that business can dip in, that post-secondary can dip in, each kind of taking what they need from the opportunity without actually changing their mission or actually changing their norms or functionality on behalf of the other. So we're operationalizing Ohio Great based on what we're calling designed opportunities. These aren't random, these are intentional. And the three focus for the designed opportunities are talent, innovation, and competitive global excellence. And by the way, this is swimming against the tide, so to speak, or this innovation piece. It was really hard to find a graphic that I liked, but that's what the fish are all about. And relative to this specific panel, which the experts will really talk more specifically on relative to aerospace, in the context of the cross-border designed opportunities in aerospace, we are working together to create those designed opportunities, and those designed opportunities to be multifaceted, so that they involve innovation, they involve the talent pipeline in the development of the talent through the post-secondary. These are projects and problems that are industry-driven. They've been identified by industry, so there's a direct and intentional collaboration of industry with this as well. And at this juncture, setting up the stage for all this collaborative cross-border success, I'd like to introduce Denis, and he can talk about what's going on with Quebec and Montreal and all of Canada. Thank you. Oh, there you go. Collaboration.
Collaboration. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lauren, for this beautiful introduction, and thanks again to Wendy, the previous speaker. I think the principles that she has explained are very beautifully into this presentation. So I'm going to talk about a consortium called CREAC. This one is based in the province of Quebec, funded by the provincial government, that is devoted to collaborative R&D between universities or colleges or research centers and industry. There's also another consortium called CARIC that we are also leading. This one is funded by the federal government, goes coast to coast, and the same kind of principle with a few nuances in the funding model. Just so you know, again, there is a scale factor we're talked about between Canada and the US. But for Canada, aerospace is very important, about 170,000 jobs. And I'm just saying a few words about Quebec because about 50% of the industry is based in Quebec. So it's about 80,000 jobs in Quebec, among which 43,000 are highly specialized, highly skilled. The other very important point too is that the aerospace is the second sector after ITC investing the most into R&D or innovation at the tune of $1.7 billion, and 70% of that is spent in Quebec. So aerospace is very important to us in Quebec and Canada. And just a slide here that serves two purposes, I should say. First of all is to just list the kind of thing in which we are active. The slide says aerospace of Quebec industry, but this is also true of the three other major centers across Canada, in Ontario, in Manitoba, and British Columbia. So a lot of aerospace activity going on. And I wanted to introduce Aero Montreal. Aero Montreal is a cluster representing the interest of the aerospace industry. And the point I want to make is that I think you said it, Lauren. I mean, R&D is one thing, training students is part of it, is very important. So Aero Montreal's job is to keep everything into perspective, keep all these different initiatives integrated, so to speak, to have the maximum impact on the industry. So what I'm trying to say is that if we deal about R&D, we can talk with CREAC and CARIC. If we want to do a little bit more broader kind of activities and human resources kind of thing, Aero Montreal should also be involved in the picture. So CREAC, this is our mission essentially. We just want to stimulate business innovation. Our consortium is industry-led. All our projects must have at least 2 companies involved and at least 2 university or research center or colleges. CREAC has been around for 14 years and I've been there for only for 2 years, so I'm still relatively objective, I think. It has been a great success in terms of getting the community together. And this model of demanding industry and university, forcing the relationship 2 + 2, I think has been quite important in creating creating a very cohesive R&D community in around Montreal. CARIC, the federal equivalent, has been there for 2 years. CREAC and CARIC, I just put both together. It's about 125, 130 members at this time. About 75 members are industrial. And out of this, about 60% are SMEs. So it's very important to get this. It's the whole, if you want, ecosystem. On the right-hand side, you have some statistics over the durations in the last 14 years. So we have involved in our programs over 1,000 researchers, whether they're in academia or industry. We've trained over 1,000 students, and we had the international organization participating to our research. And so, again, in terms of capabilities, you look at the membership. Of course, we have the largest O&M here in Canada, Bombardier, Bell Helicopter, Pratt & Whitney, and CAE. We have mid-sized companies like Thales, and we have a whole bunch of SMEs. If you look at, on the right-hand side, all the major universities in Quebec are member of CREAC. Montreal, I mean, there lies, big lies in statistics, but Montreal is apparently the second in the world after Boston in terms of the university density. So it's a very rich ecosystem for innovation. We are active in the TRL scale 1 to 6. That is the classical, I would say, R&D definition, from fundamental research, but we don't do much of that. Applied research to technology demonstration. So actually demonstrating that the technology has indeed commercial potential, so companies can further develop it and include in their portfolio of products. You see around, the point here is that our program is mostly bottom-up. The way it works is essentially companies coming to us and say, well, we have got such and such problem I would like to solve. Can you help me put a project together, find the right people at academia, research centers, and then we do it. So consequently, most of our work would be done with materials, composites. We have a lot in terms also of autonomous system, navigation system, manufacturing processes, but we are also involved in these 11 topics in here, including human factors that are more and more important, I think, in the industry. In terms of international project, at the moment, we had, as I said, about 30 countries or organizations involved in our projects. At the moment, we have about 10 countries involved, and not United States, unfortunately, but we're going to change that, right? And Ohio is one of our targets, because just like in Canada, there are some centers across the nation here that are more aerospace oriented, and Ohio is one of them. Now, I think Rainer always reminds me that we say we have nothing going on with the United States. A lot of our companies have a foothold in both countries. Like Bell Helicopter, Pratt & Whitney, Canada, and Bombardier also have operations here in the United States. So working with these companies, there is a certain collaboration, so to speak, across the border. Now, I just wanted to finish here in terms, this looks simple, but how do we promote, if we want to really promote these things, in my opinion, there are 5 basic principles that we have to address. Our notion that we like to say is a notion of research without borders. In the sense that let's forget about the borders, especially the border between Canada and the US. We're neighbors and culturally very, very close. We're looking for excellence, doesn't matter where it is, and we just put the projects together based on everybody who can collaborate. So it's research without borders, and we also add recently research without borders, in the sense that it's got to be easy. I think Wendy alluded to that earlier. So the simpler the mechanism that we're going to be using, the better it's going to be. So the first one is very important. Clear, it's obvious, but I have seen collaboration fail because people did not quite understand what there was in it for them. IP, the 2 most, difficult letters when they're side by side in that order, it's always an issue, but we can resolve these things with the companies. Source of funding on each side, it looks simple, but if we can't figure out how we're going to fund the collaboration, we're up to a bad start. Compatible processes, again, it looks simple, but sometimes the processes are just not compatible in terms of time, in terms of other issues, and it's a hell of a time to put things together. Program flexible, so there's not always some little things here and there that prevent you from working together. And the 5th point is a proactive involvement of the management team. It's a constantly relearned notion that doesn't matter how good you are. If you think people are going to come because you're good, it's a mistake. You have to be proactive, beat the bushes, and be very proactive in terms of setting these organizations. It's a lot of work, but it can be done. It works, and I think it has lots of value. So that's, in 5 minutes, what I thought was basically a summary of what's going on in Canada. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Heil, president of the Ohio Aerospace Institute. In some ways, we're similar to CREAC. Some ways, we're different. I'll talk about some of those similarities and differences. Ohio, what put Ohio on the map forever? 2 brothers from Dayton, Ohio, by the name of Wilbur and Orville Wright, who conquered the challenges of powered, controlled flight back before 1903. And ever since that point, the state of Ohio has been a world center for aerospace-related research and development. So we're blessed in this state to have 2 major U.S. federal aerospace research laboratories, the Air Force Research Laboratory in Dayton, Ohio at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, which I would argue is our nation's premier NASA research center. involved in space power propulsion research, aero propulsion research, and one area in which there is collaboration definitely with Canada in icing research. They have the most used wind tunnel in all of NASA, the icing research tunnel at the NASA Glenn Research Center. So that's a nice area of collaboration for us to build upon. And then we have tremendous companies in the state of Ohio, like General Electric Aviation, like NetJets, market leaders, and they're both of them are represented on the panel here, like Parker Hannifin, and these companies make Ohio the #1 supplier state to both Boeing commercial aircraft and to Airbus. So we are very much in the supply chain of aerospace and aviation, and Ohio's leading international trading partner by far is Canada. Very important relationship for us, of course. The major centroids for aerospace in the world arguably are Toulouse, Seattle, and Montreal. So it's very important for us to have a strong relationship with Canada. I like to think of Ohio as being not only the birthplace of aerospace, of aviation, but also we're inventing the future of aerospace here in the state of Ohio. So anyway, I start off a picture with some of that future. That is a supersonic combustion ramjet-powered missile designed to go at hypersonic velocities, meaning Mach 5 plus. And that program, it's called the X-51 Wave Rider program. It's being run out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And we're working with our collaborative partners, Boeing and Pratt & Whitney, for propulsion and airframe. So someday General Electric will be making hypersonic propulsion systems, and we'll move beyond, someday NetJets will move beyond Mach 0.9 into the quiet supersonic region, and then into the hypersonic region. And the technology, a lot of it will be developed right here in the state of Ohio. Comment on collaboration with Canada. I know of no country in which we enjoy a closer military-to-military relationship than with Canada. I was fortunate enough to go to get my graduate degree at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Dayton, Ohio, Wright-Patterson, and we had Canadian Air Force students with us at the AFIT institution, and they taught me a game played on a pool table called Crud. So anybody here hear of Crud before? It's a military thing, but that the Canadian Air Force is very much involved in. So had a great time there. It gets violent. Combat rules applying. So some of the veterans may have heard of it. And then, of course, collaboration. Spent a lot of time in Colorado Springs, which has many Canadians because of the joint partnership in the North American Aerospace Defense Command and joint leadership of that there in Cheyenne Mountain. So, tremendous relationship, and I'm glad that this event will help us continue with that. Talk to you a little bit about the Ohio Aerospace Institute. We've been around a little bit longer than CREAC, since 1989. We have started out as being a NASA-associated collaborative chartered to establish collaboration between industry, academia, and the federal laboratories in the state of Ohio to help grow aerospace in the state of Ohio. So we have a wonderful headquarters facility in Cleveland, Ohio, next to NASA Glenn, where we've hosted several Ohio-Canada summits. I'll be talking more about those in a minute. We've got 10 university members. Ohio has a plethora of engineering schools in this state, from University of Cincinnati to Case Western, Cleveland State, University of Toledo, The Ohio State University. University of Cincinnati, I might add, as the second oldest aerospace engineering department in the United States. And the Air Force Institute of Technology in Wright-Patterson was the first, had established the first graduate program in astronautical engineering of any Western university. And I might add, many astronauts. Ohio is the second largest producer of astronauts of any state. And many astronauts went to the Air Force Institute of Technology. Many of them went to Ohio State. Of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, both Gus Grissom and Gordy Cooper were graduates of the Air Force Institute of Technology. So, and then, of course, how can I not mention John Glenn and Neil Armstrong? I mean, two other iconic figures in aerospace from the state of Ohio. We have about 50 industry members, including General Electric, Boeing, Pratt & Whitney, Airbus, Parker Hannifin, Timken, many others. One company that is an industry member of the Ohio Aerospace Institute is Magellan Aerospace, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. We don't get direct funding from the state of Ohio, which is a little bit different. than CREAC. However, we earn money from work that we do for clients, sometimes with the state of Ohio, but largely with the federal government. So revenue for the institution, roughly a little bit over 11 million last year. Revenue growing to 14 million this year, and then we think it'll grow to 15 million US dollars next year. Most of that is from the federal government, research and other services that we do for the federal laboratories in the state of Ohio. So we work very, very closely with both the NASA Glenn Research Center and Air Force Research Lab. The Ohio Aerospace Institute also has an office in Dayton, Ohio, where we have 15 employees, most of them doing computational fluid dynamics research for Air Force Research Lab. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the stuff we have been doing for Jobs Ohio, for the U.S. Department of Commerce, for the Ohio Development Services Agency, and in collaboration with Reiner Kuno and the Canadian Consulate in Detroit. Very close communicative relationship. What we try to do is promote participation in U.S. and Ohio-Canada events, aerospace events, with our industry and university members. And also we will sponsor some events and host some events. So we've been up to Aero Montreal a couple times in the past. We have signed MOU both with CREAC and Aero Montreal back in 2012. No money exchange, just an agreement to exchange information and support the relative priorities of both institutions. And then back in 2012 and 2013, we held Canada-Ohio Aerospace Summits. And then I'll mention in 2013, the summit had over 140 participants, 20 exhibitors, and 30 business-to-business and 15 researcher-to-researcher meetings. And then we actually had U.S. Senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, come to that summit. The center director at NASA Glenn, Jim Free came, and then Joe Roman from Greater Cleveland Partnership, and then famed Canadian astronaut Julie Payette came and gave a talk at that summit. So more recently, we've held a collaboration roundtable with Mr. Douglas George and Eric Marquis down in the Cincinnati area, and back in January, and we supported, in collaboration with the U.S. Department of Commerce, a U.S.-Canada Aerospace Technology Exchange back in September in Toronto. So we hope to continue to do those sorts of things to facilitate collaboration between our two countries. I'm going to close with a couple pictures from the past that I had in the files. This is from Aero Montreal a couple years ago when I was pleased to be with several people who were in this room to sign the MOU. And then finally from the 2013, actually several people in the room are here too, who were up at the Ohio Aerospace Institute, where we arranged a tour of the tremendous research facilities at the NASA Glenn Research Center by visitors from Canada and some people from the U.S. as well. So it's a great relationship. We hope to foster that kind of collaboration in the future here at the Ohio Aerospace Institute. I will note that two Canadian companies are very strong members of the community here in the state of Ohio, two Canadian aerospace companies, one being Magellan Aerospace in Middletown, and the other one being Hero DevTech, who is in Strongsville, Ohio, up near Cleveland, and in Springfield, Ohio, down near Cincinnati. And I'll just show in passing that this Friday, interestingly enough, to show how well Magellan is integrated in Ohio and in the community, they're going to hold an open house down in Middletown. And of course, they're holding this in conjunction with the ARANCA, National ARANCA Association Convention. If you're into airplanes, private planes, ARANCA is a very famous company that actually Magellan has purchased. And this event's going to be held this Friday down in Middletown, Ohio, between Dayton and Cincinnati. So I think it's a good example of how important trade and collaboration is between the United States and Canada in aerospace. So I will point out also, we're going to be hearing from Bob Tanner in a minute from NetJets. Mr. Tanner and I both serve on the Ohio Aviation and Aerospace Technology Committee, which is a committee of the Ohio State Legislature. One thing we're looking at is how can we find the technology needs of Ohio-based companies and get those technology needs fed into Ohio's universities and other research institutions to help them work on those technology challenges. So I think one thing that we could follow up on is making sure that we have Magellan and Hero DevTech into the mix as companies that may have some technology needs that we can open up to universities to help solve. And also, I think I saw Dennis Andrus here. He'll be talking to you later about something called the Ohio Federal Research Network, which is an effort to unleash the potential and power of Ohio's research universities to help meet the needs of not only the federal laboratories, but of industry in the state of Ohio. So thank you very much. Pleased to be here today.
Okay, how can I top this? I'm going to give you a different viewpoint. I will say, if you look at the first slide, look at what Canada has to offer in aerospace, and it's tremendous. You see the business, at least I hope you can, $6 billion of a business in 2014, major aircraft program from the Bombardier C series, Boeing Dreamliners, Lockheed's, F-35s, helicopters. Best prospects for collaboration. You see them listed here. Okay, lots of good stuff, manufacturing and otherwise. Okay, I have. You see the possibilities. There's in Canada. There's a lot in Quebec, but really in general in Canada. Lots of aerospace manufacturing. I'll talk more about that. Aerospace, MRO. There's some space and some defense, okay? Lots of opportunities, and today there's a lot of cooperation between industries who have a foot on one side and on the other side. Not to leave Ohio behind. Ohio is really, like Mike said, we like to say we're the #1 supplier of Boeing and Airbus. We are that because General Electric is here. And with General Electric, there are close to $1 billion worth of business that gets done for 600 suppliers around the state, okay? But beyond GE, there are some centers. The Global Research, the Glenn Research Center over there, and of course the Air Force Research Lab. So we're really centered here at Ohio State with some tremendous centers, federal centers that we're supporting. We have created about a year ago the Ohio Center for Propulsion and Power, which is really has the collaboration of a number of universities. It's led by Ohio State, but you see here Cleveland State, Toledo, Akron, Dayton, and Cincinnati, and including the Air Force Institute of Technology. So if you look at this, you say, my God, these are two big entities in aerospace. Why isn't there more collaboration? And I'm going to talk about that. This is just Ohio State, and you see that we're working with a number, our labs are working through different parts, agency in the government, and lots of industries around the United States. It's a big center of collaboration. We think collaboration is really a most important thing to us. Okay? One point here that I want to, that is reinforced, beside the industry connection to university, there is a university collaboration. If I just mention a few here, we're collaborating with China, a couple of universities. We're collaborating with France, where we have dual degree programs in both places. You can get a master's degree, you have a joint master's degree where you have a master's degree with in a French school and a master's degree in the United States. We're doing the same thing, starting in Germany with Stuttgart, Munich Technical University. We have students coming over here, and we're going over there. I have 40 students working on PhDs in Warsaw that I spent some time with here, and we have a whole building in Warsaw dedicated to Ohio State students. The reason I show you that is, and I want to make a point. Look at what we have in terms of capacity, in terms of industry, and what we have in terms of collaboration on university. So, my point, we drive a few miles north of here and we get into Canada. And today we have no collaboration on any of this. So I like what Mike Hiles said. He said, hooray, we're having a lot of meetings. We sure have a lot of meetings. But that doesn't mean we need to get beyond having meetings and create something that is going to take us forward. And that's what and I've been talking about. And we're going to, so where is this going to come from? Just make the point. The companies today are working well. If I have two examples here, unfortunately, you cannot see it from here. But, I mean, you have General Electric in Canada. A few years ago, when I was still with GE, created the Bromont plant, which is a plant that started to make compressed airfoils. It doesn't make compressed airfoil just for Canadian engines. They make it for General Electric engines around the world, okay? By now, it has become a center for robotics for the whole General Electric company, okay? This in a collaboration between GE and the Canadian government. It might have been the Quebec government, maybe both. Okay, I'm not going to get it. Pratt & Whitney, similar story. They have separate entities. We have Pratt & Whitney Canada and Pratt & Whitney Aircraft, which is really Connecticut. And they do have some technologies like manufacturing, advanced manufacturing that everybody's talking about is being developed on the Canadian side. But whatever goodies comes out of there gets translated into the whole Pratt & Whitney fleet, obviously. Okay. So what can we do? What can we do that we're not doing? And I do think we need to have collaboration between universities, Canadian universities and Ohio universities. I'm still staying with Ohio. And then we do really need to have Ohio University working with Canadian industry. I think it's key for a project. This is how Aero Montreal was created. I've been to a few meetings, and basically it's a great collaboration between the work that needs to be done by Canadian industry and worked by universities. And then we'd like to try to say the same thing on our side, with Canadian OEMs coming to US universities. So how do we start? And I'm not here to say we don't need any big together meetings, but I do think we need to really focus on some things, okay? I see, in my opinion, we need to start with focusing on OEMs, basically industry connection, short range, and the example of GE and Pratt & Whitney. They both have different ways to grow, and they can benefit from there. And there are some discussions already in process, at least in one of them. Okay. Then I do think we need to start a university partnership, and it takes a longer time. We need to start probably at the research level, and Denis and I talked about it this morning, because this is where we need professors to know each other and be able to, the moment we have that connection, it can translate itself into students, and eventually we could have a real collaborative program, like we do have in Europe. And it's working very well for us. Like we have in Europe, I mean, Poland is part of Europe. Poland is a big program for us, okay? I do believe that CREAC, and when I say CREAC, it's I call the BRIC-CREAC, not only Quebec, but the rest, the Canadian government help, and Denis is part of it. And it's going to take, Denis this morning told me we need one project. I think we really should start about one project, and that will take us forward. So, thank you for your time. All right.
We're loaded. Good. Can you all hear me? Excellent. Bob Tanner, NetJets, Columbus, Ohio. I've been in transportation policy and law for nearly 30 years, formerly the general counsel for the now John Glenn International Airport, a new name there given to us just recently. Currently now, NetJet's Government Affairs Vice President. I've been there about 5.5 years, and the thing that I've really been focused on for quite some time, I'll speak to it just for a minute or two, is NextGen. And some of you may be familiar, but we'll hopefully get you a little better acquainted with that technology. So we'll talk about NetJets. For those of you who don't know too much about the company, I'll give you a brief overview. We'll speak to the Bombardier relationship. I'd like to think we're helping the Canadian economy a little bit. And NextGen, and then lastly, safety, which is the foundation of our company. NetJets is a Berkshire Hathaway company. Mr. Buffett purchased us in 1998. He was an owner and user, and apparently liked the experience, so he purchased us. We now have the benefit of the Berkshire family of businesses and his portfolio and strength and financial wherewithal, and that really drives us considerably. These companies are the family of companies at NetJets. The NetJets Aviation Company is the first and largest fractional aviation fleet in the world. Executive Jet Management is our sister company and provides the world's largest whole aircraft management and charter company. So for those companies that own their own aircraft and look to other companies to manage them, we provide that service. Marquis Jet is the essentially the jet card equivalent to a phone card. You can buy jet hours in increments as small as 10 hours. Pretty nice. We see a lot of those moving back and forth around Christmas time as stocking stuffers. I haven't gotten any of those in my stocking, but NetJets Europe, we have a business over there in London, provides all of the activity in Europe. It's fractional and jet card as well. EJM Europe is, of course, the sister company over there, providing whole aircraft management. And then our most recent venture is NetJets China, and that is still a work in progress, although we're seeing opportunity there and actually are collaborating with OSU in China in trying to get pilots into our system there. Some fun facts. 6,500 employees globally. We manage over 700 aircraft worldwide. If you compare us to commercial airlines, we are the equivalent of the fourth largest airline in the world. I think Southwest is number 5. I think they've got somewhere between 500 and 600 aircraft. So just to give you a sense of the size and the scope. 325,000 flights annually, 170 countries, a lot of miles there. And then airports, we are in virtually every airport at one point or another. There are some 5,000 public use airports in the U.S., and we've probably been in every one of them at one time or another. But we really try to go into the smaller airports, avoid congestion and delays that way. So smaller airports are our main focus. The Bombardier relationship, I'm sure you were familiar. In 2011, we announced the world's largest private aviation purchase of aircraft. That purchase was some $18 billion for Cessna, Embraer, and Bombardier aircraft. The Bombardier piece of that is the largest piece at $14 billion. 375 aircraft. We are in the process currently of onboarding those aircraft. That's a pretty involved process. You can see the numbers there. These aircraft are incredible, and they are equipped with the latest technology. They are next-gen capable or equipped as they arrive. Amazing to us, we find that the Global 6000s, the large, big cabin aircraft, we thought those would be unique enough and large enough and expensive enough to not move off the shelf very quickly. They are the fastest seller of the entire fleet. It's quite amazing, and that's really the result of having a global economy. Everybody around the world now realizes you do need to have aviation as a transportation mechanism, and having your own private global 6000 is a pretty cool way to travel. Next Gen, we are really leading the charge in Next Gen implementation. About a year and a half ago, a contingent from Ohio went to Washington and told FAA that we think Ohio has the ability to help solve the Next Gen challenge. So we have resources like GE Aviation, Ohio State, Battelle, and of course NetJets. So we said, give us a chance to help you solve this challenge. And of course, Next Gen is the transformation from radar to GPS technology. And as you might imagine, that doesn't happen overnight, and it's been an extreme challenge for the FAA, but we are really helping to implement that. Our aircraft have been equipped for some time with next-gen capability, so we've done a lot of testing, a lot of pilot activity for them. Now we're in the process of actually executing on that, and this 5-year MOA is going to be something that we think puts us on the map and makes Ohio a little bit different in how next-gen gets implemented. We're really doing some cutting-edge things here, and I'll mention these. The Ohio State project that we're really excited about is this data analytics project. We have a live feed of NAS data, National Aerospace data, coming into NetJets, and we in turn send that to Ohio State. That's every single flight that happens, every single hour, every single day. And that information is then analyzed in OSU's large computers. They slice and dice that, and we're looking for trends in air traffic. You take those trends and you create predictive analytics so that you're able to manage traffic rather than the day of. You have the ability to now look at these trends and decide well in advance, how do we move flights around before the traffic jam happens at White Plains in New York. Let's anticipate that. You know, is it weather? Is it special events? What is it? And let's plan accordingly. So that activity is going on. FAA has said to us essentially, we have a lot of data, and frankly, we don't do much with it. And that's what's given rise to this project. The long-term vision, one of the deliverables we'd like to see out of this is an app that you can sit at your boardroom or at your kitchen table and see real-time data just like the tower and the cockpit see, and you can manage your departure to the airport based on that data. That information would be, again, real-time and could influence, you know, what's the traffic situation at the airport, en route to the airport. All of that happens and is processed, you know, in nanoseconds and appears live on your screen. And we've got actually OSU assisted in building the first model of that data system. So exciting information there. More to come on that front soon. And then in Columbus, we're actually doing a procedure at Port Columbus that's pretty exciting that'll really allow for new approaches into the airport and essentially opening up the skies, creating new entrance and exit ramps, if you will, at this airport. That project should start early next year. One of the things that we're working on and Bombardier has been a part of is this DCL, it's data link. And if you're not familiar with it, it's essentially the use of texting between the aircraft and the tower. They all talk on walkies. You've heard that. That takes a long time. Wait for, you know, the person in the tower to get done talking. Think about what you want to say. Process all of that, and no texting is used. You know, we all text all day long. Some of us text while we drive, which is not encouraged. But the phenomenon of using that technique of communication it does not exist in our aviation system, and we're in the process of trying to change that. Those technologies are on our Bombardier aircraft. So with the help of Bombardier and FAA, we've been using that at different airports around the country, pointing out all of the challenges and errors in it, but it's moving along nicely. You can see it's currently being done at 73 airports. So NextGen is a technology that is going to take some time to implement. It is in different places around the country based, frankly, on the politics of that airport and that that community and who the users are and what they're willing to do. The commercial carriers are a little reluctant to invest all of the money in this technology because, frankly, it's taken so long to implement that by the time they onboard this equipment, the technology's changed. So they're apprehensive about it. Airports don't have the funding, and they say it's always the FAA that did the tower, so are you going to fund the next-gen technologies? And the FAA says, no, it's a different day. You need to step up and assist in this area. So it's a policy change. The technology's been there, but it's really going to be something for us to get done. It has to get done. It will get done. We're just trying to facilitate and expedite it at NetJets. Just something about the aircraft that we've been partnering with Bombardier on. These 350s and 650s, again, have all the state-of-the-art avionics in it. We also work with Pratt & Whitney. They power a lot of our aircraft, so lots of activity going on with Canadian companies. I'll just end with safety highlights just because, again, that's foundational to our company. Mr. Buffett said, spend as much as you need to on safety, and then spend whatever it takes to stay the safest aviation company in the world. So those are just a few things that we do in furtherance of safety. And I'll take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, Lauren?
Well, thank you, Bob. Does anyone have questions? We have a few minutes if anyone has questions of any of our esteemed panelists here. It's hard to see if there's hands, so feel free to stand up, speak out. Okay, I think folks are going to be around for a while, in or out, or on their way to airports. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that really insightful panel on the aerospace cluster. Jim, would you put up the next poll? For those of you I asked, if everybody can get up, stretch, do your thing, but stay in the room. Because we have another question to ask you as stakeholders. For those of you who weren't here this morning, there were polling instructions that you should have received coming into the event. Essentially, you log on to Ohio State's Wi-Fi network, Wi-Fi at OSU. You then type in the website up there. It's www.pollev.com/CAUS Summit. This is an open question you can answer in a sentence. We heard a lot today about different approaches to the Canada-U.S. relationship. We heard about different sectors and different levels of government actually managing the relationship. And so we heard from the private sector and what they are doing with the relationship. And so the question to you is, who should be most responsible for managing the relationship, and what should be that approach? Should it be government ad hoc, which seems to be the status quo? That's perfectly legitimate. That's what we have now. Should it be more strategic? Should we, to use a metaphor that was used in a different context, should we skate to the puck? There are a whole host of different options. Should it be driven by the private sector from the bottom up, or local governments from the bottom up? Really, at the end of the day, is it the states and provinces managing the relationship, or is it Ottawa and Washington? I mean, the options and the possibilities are only limited by your imagination. So, we're really looking forward to your feedback and your answers to this question. We're not going to be able to get specific insights from you in terms of a follow-up with audience participation, but again, we're taking all of this into consideration and formulating, the next steps. So, thank you.
I could use some sunglasses up
Yeah.
here.
Is it there?
What?
The remote.
The
Do you
Wiimote.
think someone stole it?
Yeah, it's under the candy bars.
No. I've lost my glasses.
It's not here.
Who took
No.
the remote?
Let me go.
All right.
You want me to get this meeting going?
No, I was
You want
gonna.
me to introduce you? and
There's
then you can
Dan.
introduce me?
Pretend we're Dan.
Well, there's Dan. I don't know.
Somebody took the clicker. He's like, did they take it? I'm like, yeah. He was like, oh.
Where's-
Do you think I should just start? Okay.
And then I think he stuck his head in. So
He did.
I did see him stick his head in.
I'm gonna go